Welcome to Badger State Ball from Prep Baseball, Wisconsin. We're back for episode 5. This week we've got another big week. I know I say that every week, but we've been having a lot of stuff to go through. 2026 rankings, we're breaking down an excellent class and a ton of talent at the top. A couple weeks ago, we previewed and broke down the 2025 rankings update. There was some movement at the top there. There is with this one as well. And then sandwiched between those, we brought on Drew Locascio, Wisconsin and Illinois scouting supervisor, to talk about how rankings are made. I think that's very important that you understand how rankings are made. I always wondered, at least for me as a player, why am I ranked where I am? And so Drew broke that down, all the different factors that we take into account. It's not just velo, or it's not just how often you are seen in showcases, but there are a lot of factors that we take into account. So make sure to go check out that one, either on our YouTube channel or on Apple or Spotify podcasts. And that'll help inform the 2025 and the 2026 rankings a little bit more. And while you're at it, also be sure to throw us a like or subscribe on YouTube and on wherever you get your podcasts. So we appreciate the support, the reviews, the subscriptions, however you like to consume our videos or our podcasts. And this week we have a new segment that Vinny wanted to throw in there, and that is a random fact about Wisconsin baseball, because we're all things Wisconsin baseball. Vinny is practically Mr. Wisconsin baseball himself. So Vinny, what's today's random fact about Wisconsin baseball?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting one. So I played for George Williams at Lacrosse my senior year in 2002. We were actually looking for a head coach. George Williams played in the big leagues 3 years for the Oakland A's, parts of a season with the San Diego Padres as well. George is from La Crosse, Wisconsin, went to La Crosse Central High School. And George, awesome guy, really kind of a tribute some of my success in the professional level to George. He's just a great baseball man. But he told me this fact way back in early 2000s. There were here it is. There were 3 major league starting catchers back in the late 90s, all from a 30-mile radius in northwestern Wisconsin. Those were George Williams for the Oakland A's. He was a starting catcher for the Oakland A's. Damian Miller went to Westby High School. He went to West Salem High School. And he was the starting catcher for the Arizona Diamondbacks, obviously for the World Series winning Arizona Diamondbacks. But in the late 90s, that's where he got his start with the Diamondbacks. Actually, he got drafted by the Twins and then over to the Diamondbacks. And then Scott Service was the starting catcher for the Chicago Cubs. He went to Westby High School. So kind of a crazy random fact, all in that same era, late 90s, 3 starting catchers in the major leagues, all from that northwestern Wisconsin area. So that is the segment. And, are we, David, are we going to go ahead and ask listeners of the podcast to go ahead and send in a random fact, or perhaps if we don't get any, perhaps we can find our own. But that is one of the most interesting things I've ever heard about Wisconsin baseball.
Yeah, we want to hear from you guys, so we'll put out on Twitter a place for you guys to tell us your random Wisconsin baseball fact, because we want to hear more, and we're going to come with a new one every episode. Vinny, maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit on a future one, but in 2006, correct me if I'm wrong, you were teammates with Damian Miller, so we had both of the universities in lacrosse represented, also both catchers, you and Damian Miller on the same team?
That is quite random as well. That's right. Yeah, UW Lacrosse I went to, and then he went to Viterbo, and then drafted by the Twins. So, yeah, that I guess could qualify, but you just called it out, so I think we got to move on from that one, too.
Yeah, somehow I think that's even more impressive that both UW Lacrosse and Viterbo were represented on this Major League Baseball roster. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were the teams I grew up on. I remember Damian Miller, and in fact, I don't know if my dad listens to this podcast, but he, of course, the Bucks point guard Damian Lillard. My dad always calls him Damian Miller by accident.
Damian Miller, by the way, is the funniest human being I have ever met. Not just teammates that I've had, but the funniest human being. So, Damian, if you're listening, maybe we get you on one of these days.
That's amazing. I had zero idea he's from Wisconsin, so that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Well, I wish we could talk about Damian Miller for another hour, but we do have more things that we want to talk about, like the class of 2026 that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about because it's such a talented class and one that we're all excited to not only to rank and to watch over the summer and in the spring season, I guess, first, but also just because we've got Dom Sandelli, Cal Moreau, and Ben Kuglich, who are all guys who could be those next Wisconsin natives in the pros. And we had a little bit of movement at the top. We had previously had Cal Moreau up at number 1 and some reshuffling. And if you go back and listen to Drew's episode last week, we talked about how just because there's some shift in rankings doesn't mean that a player actually dropped. Maybe one player just impressed us that much, and we might actually think both of them improved. It's just how the rankings shake out. And so we'll start with you, Vinny, talking about Dom Sandelli, because I know you love Dom Sandelli. You think he's a pro bat. I think all of us do, but you've made some bold claims about Dom Sandelli. So what sets him apart from some of the other high-profile bats that we've seen come out of Wisconsin? Because it's a little bit of a tough profile when we're looking at the pro game, but you think that he's separated himself in that next tier of future professional bats. So what makes you think that about Sandelli?
Well, think about all the things that we've talked about so far, guys, just in terms of, where are the guys typically as position players that we do rank towards the top? It's middle of the diamond type guys defensively. Well, Dom Sandelli is not that. So how is he ranked number 1? And he has been ranked number 1 a number of different times in our rankings, and he's shuffled, debuted at 3, and now he is shuffled between 1, 2, and 3 throughout his high school career at this point. So how does he get to the top of this ranking, especially among such a talented group of players? It's because of that bat. I do really think that this bat is a special bat. It stands out. I mean, it really does. Just the way that not just the swing, right? I do fall in love with swings, and I am in love with this Dom Sandelli swing. But it's that it factor when you see this kid in the box, and he's just got that little something. It actually, his swing actually reminds me of a player that I loved his swing at the early levels in the minor leagues and then out of high school was Dominic Smith, actually. And he has put together some nice seasons in the big leagues, Dom Smith, but it's a kind of a similar profile, quite frankly, to that. And I just think it is that special of a bat. He tore the cover off the ball this fall. He finds the barrel consistently. He's got that little something. It's hard to describe as a scout. You guys all know what I'm talking about. That little rhythmic move with the bat tip and the bat in the hands right as he gets to the launch position that, again, you can't really teach, you can't really describe, but when you see it, you know it, it's there. Dom Sandelli has that. I think it is that special of a bat. He is not that. He is not the type of an athlete where you would say, this guy is a slug. He can't really do anything but hit. He's not that. He actually moves pretty well. They're looking to have him maybe play some left field this spring and summer. But he's a very good defensive first baseman. But they're looking to bounce him around a little bit just to improve his profile and just show that he is a good athlete. I mean, he is. He moves well. So, but it is the bat that's the carrying tool. And when you are a first base left field type, that bat does have to be special to be ranked number 1 in this class, especially. And I do believe it is that special of a bat.
Yeah, and he's been doing it. Like the other factor here is like the level of like proving it he's had. Like he's just done it from the jump. And if you want to talk about like the value of like in-person scouting, like there's a lot you could do with analytics, and how, you can get far like deciphering like who's really good like on paper and who's not, like using the data and the technology that we have access to. With Dom, it's so clear when you watch him in the box how confident he is with the strike zone. Like he takes pitcher's pitches, like even for strikes, like he's comfortable with 2 strikes. Like he really knows how to use the entire field. Like he's not trying to hit a home run every time. I feel like he's hitting home runs on accident even. Like it's kind of like these like extra characteristics like that help elevate like that offensive profile. I feel like he could walk in any at bat. Like anytime he steps up to the plate, like he could walk if he wanted to. He'd fight off some pitches and just find a way to get to first base. But He'll sell out for like in a really good advantageous count. Like it's all those like little things, and he's been doing that for a while, and like that's a pretty mature approach, right? And like again, unteachable stuff, and so you can't really say enough good things about Dom Sandelli's like offensive potential here.
Yeah, he had a max exit velo over 100 miles an hour, so he's got the juice, and there's just a presence about him in the box, as you mentioned. I remember seeing him in state this year, and he walks up to the box, and just watching, you almost think to yourself, holy crap, Dom Sandelli is up, and you know he can change the momentum of a game, even if there aren't runners on. And I think one at bat, he laced a ground ball, and he was out, but I mean, it was a ground out, but just the ball comes off the bat differently. And then I think next at bat, same thing with, as you were saying, he fought off pitches and drew a walk. So the presence there is crazy. He's the number 4 first baseman nationally. We talk about a few of these guys at the top as potential draft guys, and he's a Louisville commit. Working down to Cal Moreau and Ben Kuglich, those guys are a little bit different. They're a lot more versatile in that they're two-way guys, both on the mound and in the middle infield. We're almost kind of split on whether they'll be more of bats or more of arms, because they can do both. They can run, they can field. They really can do some of everything. Moreau's a UCF commit. We talked about his commitment a few weeks ago, and Kuglich is a Florida State commit. So I guess we'll start with Moreau, and we'll separate his skill set a little bit, because we know that part of the appeal to him is that he's great at both. But what makes him special as, we'll start with a position player, maybe beyond just the legs, where he runs a 6'6", 60-yard.
Yeah, so, the ceiling is just incredibly high with Cal Moreau. The impressive thing with what he was able to do at the future games, when I saw what he was able to do there, it's the defense. It's kind of the total package with Cal Moreau as a position player, right? So, I mean, he can play a very high-level shortstop, but at the same time, he's such a great athlete, and he's only going to continue to get more athletic. Just that frame is what you would want, right? If you're picking at a high spot in the draft. I mean, if you're looking at a body, it's like Cal Moreau, wow, this kid is going to only continue to get better. But then the athleticism as well. So he's such a great athlete that you could stick him out in center field, and you'd be pretty confident that he'd be able to play a high-level center field as well. He's got a great arm. He's got all the tools in the world that you like to see. The bat, it's a compact swing. He can drive the ball to all fields. We saw him hit a couple of rockets at the future games, hit a triple. I mean, the kid can really pick him up and put him down once he's underway. And it's just that impressive of an athlete, and then the ceiling is so incredibly high. So as a position player, you really love what he can do. And again, you can dream on how high this ceiling is, and as the bat continues to develop, most people think it will. So it's really hard to really, parse out, is he going to be a position guy or is he going to be a pitcher, because it's equally impressive on the mound.
Yeah, I don't know where he's going to be ultimately, but like that's a good thing because I've seen it awesome on the mound. Like he was really, really impressive in the spring for us when we hosted a little like invitational at the Rock for the high school teams, just kind of across the state. Monona Grove was there, and one of the best starts I saw like in recent memory, at least last year, was his, and he just had this wipeout slider that he had total control of, mid upper 80s on a super cold day, just pumping fastballs in the zone. No one could catch up to it. He's got a really high ceiling on the mound, but it's like if he's going to keep hitting and with the type of athlete he is, then like positionally it's probably his future. But knowing how gifted he is on the mound too, it's like, all right, what do you do with that? Like it's just exciting all around.
Fields, with him and Kuglich being 2 and 3. I mean, I keep bringing it up. We talked with Drew about how a lot of the time it's so hard to find who is better, who do you want to put in the rankings, and there's a lot more nuance required to understand these players than just merely that ranking at number 2 and number 3. But I want to hear you compare them because they're such similar talents, but they also have different strengths. And so when you're looking at Moreau or a Kuglich, what are some of the strengths that each of them bring to the table?
So yeah, it's very similar frames, very similar athletes, very similar profiles altogether. Moreau does a lot of things at an advanced level just across the board. Kuglich has top level arm talent. Let's be fair here. Like up to 91 with a lot of carry on it, big breaking ball, a lot of strikes, and then obviously he's a shortstop. He's getting more versatile. He's trying out the outfield, and then just a compact swing that he's hit a lot in front of us.
Yeah, both those profiles, I mean, you'd almost have to do a double take. Like, am I watching Kuglitch or Moreau? I mean, because just the way that just the bodies, right? They're both premium frames, and then they're premium athletes as well. So Kuglitch can really run as well. And so as that bat continues to develop, what is he going to play at that next level? Now, with Kuglitch, you might say that his future and draft potential is more on the mound, just because you wouldn't be surprised if Kuglitch was just kind of touching and eventually sitting mid-90s with his heater, and then with a really sharp breaking ball to go with it. So I mean, the arm talent is definitely there, and you might give the lean towards Kuglitch being more of a draft prospect on the mound, but you never know how that bat develops. I remember seeing him as an 8th grader hitting absolute tanks at the Rock. And so, I mean, it's in there. The ability to barrel up the ball and drive the ball out of the ballpark is definitely there for Ben Kuglitch, and we'll see what happens as far as where he's going to end up positionally.
Yeah, in the last year, I think we've had all 3 of them at number 1 at different times, and it's not like they're really falling. They all are nationally ranked players, and I think it speaks to how good each of them are, all 3 of them, that we've switched them around because they're all incredible talents. Right now in the top 250 nationally, Dom Sandelli's at 114, Moreau is at 118, Kuglitch at 165, and then you've also got Colton Seman from Brookfield Central at 243. In 2024, we had 4 guys in the top 250 as well. 2018 is the only other time that's happened since PBR expanded its coverage nationally. Andy, you've been here the longest. Does this class bear resemblance to either of those classes?
Yeah, well, it's kind of unique, actually, because while eventually, we've had Wisconsin classes that, like, earn their way into, like, multiple guys, 4 or 5 guys earn their way into the top, 200, 250. It in an understandable, like, cold weather, whatever, Wisconsin way, it takes a little bit of time for them to kind of prove themselves, mature, develop, or some of the warm weather states are doing that a little bit quicker at a quicker pace. The difference with the 26s here, like this top 3 especially, was just how quickly they solidified themselves as, like, the national type prospect. I think that's sort of the separator here, is that it was just so evident that they were in a different, like, tier, that proved, like, the caliber of prospect they were from the get-go. So it's interesting to see, like, though in years past we've had prospects in Wisconsin, like, develop, like, and over time they enter the top 150 or something like that. Maybe that just kind of, like, gives these guys a leg up, like, where are they going to end up once they're about to graduate, like, in that final version of the rankings on the national side. Like, who knows? I don't know. Maybe all 3 of them are top 100 or higher. That's the exciting part, because there's still so much time to go here.
Yeah, so even when that's what stood out to me with this class, is the fact that, like, just scroll to the 2025 rankings really quick. I mean, these guys, Peter Cuso and Carter Cutts and Ryan Brennicky and Ethan Bauerschmidt, Cooper Jesperson, these guys have emerged as pro prospects. Maybe you would think of them maybe last year, especially Cuso, with the ability to spin that breaking ball. Like, you're going to follow them, you're going to keep your eye on them. You're going to definitely see how they develop, and then go ahead once the season for their draft year is coming, then you're going to go ahead and really lock in on those guys and then make that determination. I think it's safe to say that all 3 of these guys, Sandelli, Moreau, and Kuglitch, are pro prospects right now. I mean, if they, let's say, reclassed to 2025s, you would be very comfortable being like, all right, I'm going to slot this guy here and give him this amount of signing bonus. Moreau and Kuglitch, same thing. So I just think that's, and it's to Andy's point. He just made this point that how quickly these guys have emerged as pro prospects and national ranks. That's what's been so impressive, and that's just a testament to how good these guys are. And it just doesn't really stop with them. This class is really deep and really exciting.
Yeah, last year, obviously, we saw J.D. Dix and Eddie Reinders both go in the top few rounds. It seems like we could see that happen again in 26. You go back to 2018, and you had Jared Kelnick in that class, but also Jacob Campbell, Alex Pinellas, Max Alba. They're all playing minor league ball right now. So a lot of pro prospects, and that one, this class seems to be right up there with them. And I did go back to the 2018 class nationally. Number 5 in the class was your guy, Vinny. It was Bryce Terang from California.
He is my guy, and I am the president of his fan club. But yeah, he was the number 5 player, prep player, right, from PBR. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of talent here. Colton Seman, we mentioned before. He's ranked number 243 nationally and number 4 in this class, and he's had a big rise. He was topping at 80 miles an hour if you go back to February of 2023, and then in February of this year, reached 88, now up to 90.4 miles an hour, and one of the best left-handed pitchers in the Midwest, somebody that every time I see him, I always walk away impressed. So is this someone that, because he took that kind of unconventional path, I mean, or maybe not unconventional, but just a surprising rise as quick as it was. Fields, I think you've seen him probably the most out of all of us here. What has it been like to see that rise from Semelman?
Honestly, every time I see him, he gets better. So it's a completely different look every time. This past fall was arguably the best. He's generally a 3-pitch guy, but this past outing in the fall, it was only a 2-pitch. He only needed 2 pitches to get through his outing, and it was still impressive. Ton of strikes. It's a starter. It's big breaking ball, and he throws his changeup to both-handed batters.
Yeah, and so this time last year, not quite, like February of 2024, this year, he shows all this velo, ton of velo, and that's fairly not typical, but when you see that, you're like, that's great. This player's been working really hard. That's great to see. Might not translate exactly in game like that to that velo range or something. It's pretty understandable, but not the case with Colton Seman. I think that was the most impressive part is to what Fields said. Just continue every look. Just kept getting better and better. Throwing even more velocity as the summer came around and yeah, that was the standout stuff from him. Is that it was no fluke, or it wasn't just a adrenaline pumping in this velo or in this pen. So that was the most impressive part of his 2024 was that just kind of proved it each time out.
Yeah, and it's really an interesting look when you go back and if you are a subscriber to our website, which I encourage everybody to do, you can log in and take a look at Colton Semelman's videos from the past, and it's incredible where he started in the winter of I'm sorry, and it was it in 2022 in the winter as an 8th grader, and it was a smaller body, smaller frame, but you could see the delivery. Obviously, the velo wasn't there yet, and then all of a sudden, each subsequent video to Fields and to Andy's points, how much better that he has gotten. Yes, he is physically matured, but there's still some physical maturity left in here, and it's a quick, whippy arm that talk about stuff that you can't teach. And I was on the little broadcast of his outing in the future games, his second outing in the future games, and I made the point that these guys just don't grow on trees, right? These left-handers with a 3-pitch mix, with an athletic delivery and such a quick whippy arm out front, the ability to get through the baseball out front with his fingers and really just kind of whip through the baseball. And there's still refining left to do to this delivery, but you can really envision how good that Colton Semelman is going to be, and then you just dream on another guy that you can dream on, the fact that he is, he's still maturing into his body. And so he controls his delivery really well. He's only going to continue to get better with that. And you just love where you think the strikes are going to be. You love where you think the pitch profiles are going to be when he is a finished product. I'm a huge fan of Colton Semelman. I mean, we talked about this too, guys. If you put him in a different class, he might be number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And every time I saw him, also, I was a little bit worried about him. Maybe not worried, but after I saw him in showcase, I thought, okay, I want to see it in game. And in game, it was better than even in the showcase. So
Yeah.
he was impressive, somebody that I think could see in pro ball in a few years. He's committed to South Carolina, so somebody that's right up there. A couple middle infielders after Semmelman in our rankings, Chance Ruby and Winston Alonzo. Chance Ruby is, we talk about number one in other classes. Chance Ruby has the tools to be a number one player in some classes. 6.62, 60-yard, 97.7 max exit velo, 92 miles an hour across the infield, 88.5 topping off the mound. Fields, this is somebody that, the tools are there. I don't want to say why is this guy not higher, because there's so much talent ahead of him just in those first four guys, but make the case that he could be right at the top of the list, right?
Yeah. Back in 2023, I actually called Andy Soroka while watching Chance Ruby for the first time, and I told him, Chance Ruby is going to be a future gamer next year. And that was off of an inning on the mound and a couple at bats. Like, his talent was there. Like, in game, it shows up more than like on the showcase. It's arguably more impressive. But even with that, there's still a large, considerable ceiling with Chance. Like, I'm expecting him to make some strides this offseason in a big way, to be honest.
Yeah, and I want to add in on Chance Ruby. So you just mentioned all the tools. You just mentioned how impressive like the athlete is. You mentioned how impressive like some of the metrics are with him. But then you watch him actually play baseball, and you don't realize like how much instincts are there, how much aptitude is there. We saw him in the future games against some pretty tough arms from Illinois and even from Missouri. The fact that he's able to foul off pitches with two strikes, have a two-strike approach, and then just able to shoot the ball the other way. I mean, you talk about a guy that has just those baseball instincts and just, again, that baseball IQ, that baseball aptitude. You wouldn't necessarily think that would be coming from a guy like Chance Ruby with such loud tools and such a high ceiling with the athleticism. I mean, just because a lot of times you just see these guys, lighted up on the showcase circuit and lighted up with the exit velocities and the velocity across the infield and the 60-yard dash time. But then again, you just bear down and watch this kid play. That's what's most impressive to me, and why I love Chance Ruby and why he is so high in our rankings right here.
No, he's just such a natural. Like, that's like the best way to put it. Like, because his reps like are probably lower than some of the guys we've talked about. Like when we're referring to like that top three establishing themselves like as quickly as they did. Like Ruby didn't like come out of nowhere per se, I guess, but he just didn't have like that level of like he's on the national stage like early, like whatever. And he, with that being said, like at the future games, it's a high pressure environment. Just like this cool, calm, collected kid who took a ton of really good at bats, maybe like the best like combined potentially, like him and Sam Abrahamson stick out to me. But that was like the difference. I mean, he just kind of like a low pulse kid, just knows he's good, but like it's like a quiet confidence, like good to be around. Like he's got a ton going for him, just instinctive, natural, simple as that.
Yeah, Ruby and Alonzo are the top uncommitted players in the class right now. So if you're a college coach listening, you should be in on them if you're not already. Both future gamers. Winston Alonzo is pretty young for his class. So Andy, I know you're a huge Winston Alonzo fan, as are the rest of us. But how do you factor in somebody's age? I mean, is it extra impressive to see someone do that when he's at least a few months younger than most of the players in his class?
Yeah, I think so. Like, you don't maybe put a ton of weight in some of those things. Like, you can let that play out. We're not drafting these guys just yet anyway. There's still so much time with them. But where you can factor it in, I think, is Winston Alonzo was this bat to ball like prospect. Like he had really easy to like left-handed swing. It's just one of those that you're just like, you see it once, you're like, I'm in on that. Like, I like it. and he was a little bit smaller. So, but it kind of checks out, right? When you factor in like this age now, like he was smaller when some of the guys around him were maybe a little bit bigger at the time. He's caught up. Like now he's, I think, 6'1", getting a little bit more physical. The bat to ball stuff stayed, which is terrific. And then this year, 2024, he's starting to hit the ball with more authority, which showed in the summer, and then eventually, especially in the fall. Which is awesome for him because it really elevates like the floor he has, which I thought was already pretty high. Like it's just a likable bat like that you want in the lineup. I think at a high level college program because he uses the entire field. He's a smart hitter. Doesn't swing and miss often at all. And then all of a sudden, if he's making a little bit more game power, turning some doubles into home runs here and there, that's a highly productive player that like positionally like. I think eventually he'll be a solid third baseman, second baseman at the minimum. Like he's still got plenty of time to figure out like shortstop or, be a high level left side defender. Like that's great. But either way, like the bat is so good that I think it'll carry him to wherever he wants to go.
Yeah, Fields, you want to add in? I know you're a big fan of Winston Alonzo, as am I. I'll go after you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go into more about the makeup of the kid. Like this, I can't say anything bad about Winston Alonzo. The makeup is off the charts with this kid. Super respectful, super just good mannered kid, and just a great conversation. He's super mature for his age. On top of that, yeah, it's the bat to ball that's carrying him, and honestly, knowing what his brother has turned into as a sophomore in college, there's a lot more that he can fill into that frame.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback a little bit on the makeup. Yes, it's a conscientious kid. It is a well-mannered kid. It is a very kind human being. But this is a competitor in the box with that presence in the box. And so that's what you do love to see. So you love the whole package right there with the makeup. He's going to continue to improve. I absolutely love Winston Alonzo, being around him at the future games. Yes, it was the makeup, but it was the swing. It was the bat to ball like Andy described. It was the ability to hit the ball to all fields. Talk about a high baseball IQ right here. I think he's going to continue to get better defensively as well. I agree with Andy. I think it's going to probably stick on the left side of the infield, most likely third base, because I do think he is going to get a little bit bigger and physical, and I think he's going to hit some tanks here as he continues to develop physically. Love Winston Alonzo. Again, probably a third baseman when all said and done, but ranked 6th here because of a little bit similar to a Dom Sandelli, the fact that the bat is going to be the carrying tool, and it is a special type of a barrel feel here.
Yeah, I actually, just real quick too, I thought he had like the at-bat of the future games for Team Wisconsin, if you remember it, against Kansas, I think it was, where they had this like 5'11" lefty who was like 93 or something, more 93s than anything, and Winston fought off a ton of pitches, like had a really long at bat. It ended up in a strikeout, but it was like a 10, 11 pitch at bat that like I think there were college guys like walking over to see like who this was. So like kind of goes to show you like, all right, whatever. Like on the box score it says strikeout, but I think he earned a ton of attention just on that at bat alone. Like that was pretty special.
Yeah, and I remember too who was laboring on the mound, but it was a situation where one of our pitchers was laboring a little bit on the mound. It was the second inning that he threw, and there was a tough top spin ground ball, second hop, kind of took off on him. He made a nice play, and then he stepped on third and threw the guy out at first to end the inning. We were going to have to roll the inning, which would have been a little, that's tougher for the pitcher, but he picked up his pitcher. Long inning out there. And the other thing that we haven't talked about, he's one of the youngest players in the class, right? So, you love to see that.
Yeah, another player, young for his class because he just reclassified, Maddox Lassard. We put him in at number 8. He debuted at number 8 in the 2026 rankings after being the top-ranked player in the 2027 class. He's an excellent talent. We've seen him for a few years now, even though he still is only 16 years old. So Fields, as someone who is involved in making the rankings, how do you go about finding a spot for him within a stacked list? Because we keep talking about the talent, and I want that to be clear. This is an extremely talented class. So you add another talented catcher, in this case, to a talented class. How do you figure out where to put him in there?
So yeah, Max Lassard has actually played up most of his travel ball career, and on top of it, he was a first team All State this past year in the high school season. So he's the performance backs up. Like moving up the class shouldn't be an issue. It's a catch and throw right profile with a bunch of pop from that right side. The thing that we're looking for in the future is just more consistency just across the board with the looks, to be honest.
Yeah, and we love Maddox Lassard. I mean, he was the number 1 ranked player in the 2027 class, right? So he reclassed up, so now all of a sudden he is one of the youngest players in the 2026. He is the youngest player in this class at this point in the 2026 class. Where do you slot him? We could be talking about Maddox Lassard at the end of the summer as shooting right up this ranking, right to the top of the. I mean, he could potentially do that. We want to see where it ends up. I think that's kind of where we kind of conservatively slotted him in here at number 8. We just really didn't know where exactly he would slot it. I think we all feel pretty good about it, and it's more of a testament to how talented the guys ahead of him are. We love Maddox Lassard. We believe in the talent. We understand how talented this kid is, and there's pro scouts, professional scouts already on this kid. And so we're just kind of seeing not a wait and see type of an approach, but just seeing where it's a big spring and summer for him, and we do believe that he's going to have a monster spring and summer. But we're just going to kind of slot him right here. This is a situation, Andy, right, that you have not run into, right? A kid reclassing that is this highly ranked from a different class and then reclass to another class. So you being the senior guy here at Prep Baseball, in terms of how many rankings that you have gone through, you haven't seen this situation before, have you?
Yeah, it doesn't happen too much in Wisconsin, or at least it hasn't in the last 5+ years that I can recall, or at least at this point in time. It's a little early for Max in a good way. That means he's got kind of time to just adjust to this new environment. Like Field said, he's been playing against these guys for the most part. So we'll be familiar with that side of it, but still, there's a lot of change that comes with a decision like that. So, we'll see how he adjusts. But I'm confident he takes it very seriously, and it'd be impossible, in my opinion. I would wonder the guys listen to this to outwork Maddox Lassard.
Yeah, right,
it seems
right.
like he is the hardest worker I've ever encountered, and I don't say that lightly. So we'll see. And it's also one of my biggest learning lessons, I guess, since I've been doing this is seeing someone or hearing about someone as an 8th grader who's supposed to be the next big thing. And then seeing it and believing it. I always thought that person was almost guaranteed right away to, hit 500 in the spring and hit 10 home runs even as a freshman, whatever it is. And it doesn't always happen. And the player ends up being really good anyway. But with Lassard, he did actually have a tremendous spring as a freshman. He hit for average, he hit for power. He received, it was a really good Muskego pitching staff that he received. He called a good game as far as I know. And those things are all right, this doesn't just happen. So we know that's in there. He's got a super high ceiling. That's pretty obvious.
Yeah, there are a few other arms that are in the top of this class, and I wish we had time to spend a deep dive into all of them, but we just don't. But Brett Beyondich from Kettle Moraine Lutheran, he's a TCU commit. We had him at number 7. He's someone we've seen pretty regularly and someone who's also, potential to be a pro guy. Tyson Golkowski, who's teammates with Lassard at Muskego, another excellent talent. Cam Carter, Montgomery O'Brien, both guys we've talked about in recent episodes. But a few others that we wanted to focus on. Ezra and Caleb Ligon, they're over at Madison's Valar Phillips Memorial High School. They're both excellent talents and hitters guys, I believe. Andy, are they two-way guys? Are they ones where they're upside? We're still trying to figure out what they might look like, and that's part of the appeal to them?
They're probably both position players, and that's just because I think they've started to really show that's just where their best potential position. They're starting to really, really produce right now. They're multi-sport talents, so they're good basketball players as well, real prospects in basketball too. So that stands out to me because then you kind of lessen maybe some of just in this day and age. There's so much training. Kids are focusing on one sport earlier and earlier. So you kind of have to adjust your own like expectations sometimes, and just remember that, like recalibrate and be like, not every kid is like this, and that kind of applies to the Liggins. Like the best way possible, like they're spending time playing another sport like at a high level too, and that they care about it. So maybe some of that baseball stuff and the baseball feel, whatever, is just not quite there yet. But like that can only be a good thing in a case like the Liggins, because they both play already, like currently in their current forms, like at a high level, in my opinion. Like Ezra is a really strong center fielder. Like we've seen him make some really, at least I have, like make some really like good chase down routes, like and he's a left-handed hitter with athleticism. We've seen he had a really good game one at the future games, so he's kind of unfazed. Like, so he has a high ceiling as like that left-hand hitting center fielder. But on the flip side, like Caleb is a little different just as a right-handed hitting like third baseman. But he's gotten better and better every year at third base defensively. He looks like he could be an asset there down the road. And his bat to ball skills are really, really strong. Like he was on the barrel at the future games too. He pulled the double down the line, I think, off a good arm. And he has, equally an exciting ceiling as his brother, as his twin brother. So both those guys are really prominent prospects in the state, like, and they have high potential, I think, just because like they don't quite have the baseball reps. But I think if you're them and the athletes that they are, like, I mean, to me, that's almost a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, 6'4" frames with thin waist, high waist, thin waist, slope shoulders, everything you would want to describe about a frame. You're going to just dream on these bodies and just wondering where they could go. I mean, and once they do fill out to their potential, I mean, watch out, because already the ball is jumping off both of these barrels. And like you said, it's like Caleb with that short they both have these short, handsy, compact swings that control the barrels, which is so impressive. And then when they do drop that barrel on the baseball, I mean, the ball just absolutely rockets off of their bats. They have baseball IQ. They can understand where balls and strikes are within the strike zone. You do like the defense from Caleb at third base, and both with Ezra in center field. Hard to really rank these twins, and they are twins, to separate them. But, yeah, I mean, we give the slight edge to Ezra every time in the rankings, but both these kids have huge ceilings.
Yeah, and that's really just to, like, I'm sure this is something that, like, Drew, like, can elaborate it on in, like, the rankings discussion. But, like, sometimes it is, whatever, fortunately or unfortunately, just as simple as, like, yeah, technically the college recruiting coordinators, the pro scouts, they're looking for left-handed hitters, center field, up the middle athletes first. Like, so Ezra checks those boxes, but they're both really good. Is the point? Like, I think it doesn't really affect the way we view them.
And you talk about multi-sport athletes, and I want to hear from you too, Vinny. You're being a former pro scout, what that sort of how that factors in. But another guy, Matthew O'Grady Jr. from Lake Geneva Badger, is an excellent football player. And I want to read off his stats. 1,800 and over 1,800 rushing yards on 148 attempts, over 12 yards per carry, 29 touchdowns, 139 yards per game. He passed for 427 yards and 5 touchdowns. Southern Lakes Conference Offensive Player of the Year, 2-time first-team All-Conference and All-Region. So this is a guy that, I mean, I think we could see him even playing maybe both college baseball and football. I heard someone who knows him describe him as the best athlete he's ever seen. So with these two sport athletes, we'll start with you, Andy. Maybe O'Grady's doesn't have quite the polish that others do. I'm not saying he doesn't, but sometimes these multi-sport athletes don't. But what sort of ceiling, what makes you optimistic then when they do maybe focus on one sport or when they get that more specific baseball training? Yeah,
because when you compare like players like this, like the Liggins, like O'Grady maybe, like you're comparing them against players who maybe are spending 365 days a year focused on baseball. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like that's awesome too. Like if that's what those players want to pursue, like, more power to them. But it leaves you kind of wondering or optimistic about like, okay, well, if this is how good this player is without, that full dedicated attention to one sport, imagine the possibilities. once he is able to just focus on baseball alone. And so that's kind of why like that multi-sport prospect or label gets talked about so often, I think. And certainly applies to O'Grady. I mean, I think those stats speak for themselves, but, in case you needed more, he's off the charts with all of the athletic testing that you can imagine. He was also on our Future Games team this summer, and he was the top of the charts there. So, he might be the best athlete in this class, and that's with, guys like Cal Moreau at the top of it. So that says a lot on its own, too. But with him on the baseball side, he's got a ton of tools. He runs. He has arm strength. Center field type, definitely could fit out there. Really strong kid. I think right now it's more of can he unlock some of he has a ton of inherent strength. Can he unlock some of that inside the batter's box for a little bit more game power potentially? That could definitely take his game to the next level. And it's totally realistic to think that that's within his near future here too. So. I've always been a big fan of Matthew O'Grady's.
The thing that you want to believe in the bat and where you want to see and where you could see potentially this bat really ticking up is the fact that you love how short and compact and quick his hands are and how tight this rotation is to and through the baseball. And so with guys with that kind of ability to rotate that quickly and the hands to really fire through the hitting zone that quickly, you never want to give up on that bat. So as he continues to get on the barrel with the baseball, he's going to be able to hit for power. And really, you do see more of a line drive type stroke. And watch out, right? With this kind of athleticism, he's going to be hitting doubles and triples for days.
Yeah, another guy. It kind of fits that same offensive profile, but Sam Abrahamson, he just committed to St. Thomas. And we often spend time talking about commits. We spend time talking about the top players in the class when we have a rankings update. And so Abrahamson fits both of these categories. A 101 max exit velo, sub-7 60-yard time, excellent bat, up to 88 on the bump too. Vinny, I mean, this is a unique talent, someone who's got that two-way talent, and someone who, I mean, there's the overall skill set. What's the carrying tool here? Is there a carrying tool, or is it that just all of them are good?
I love watching Sam Abrahamson play baseball. I mean, because you see the frame, it's 5'11", 178. We have him listed here on the website. You don't even know how much more he's going to gain, right? Just because of the way that his frame is put together. But it is all kinds of strength in those hands. It is a whippy and loose barrel. It's not even necessarily how you would, quote unquote, exactly teach a player if you were starting out with a kid and trying to teach him how to swing the bat, how you would do it. It's almost because the bat is in the zone for so long that, is there some length here? I don't think so. He's got the ability just to time up the bat to the ball in the hitting zone, and then the ball just absolutely jumps off of his bat. It is really, really impressive. One of my favorite players in the class, quite frankly. I mean, University of St. Thomas got a gem right here in Sam Abrahamson. We told him also that, hey, look, we have a bunch of infielders at the future games. We need you to go ahead and play some outfield. And he did, and he looked like he was very comfortable out there, getting jumps, getting reads, balls off the bat. The routes were clean. There's a really sure-handed defender here, but he can also play infield. And then the fact that it's a 101 exit velocity from such a smaller frame, it just goes to show when players just allow their athleticism to take over and just see ball, hit ball, and just allow that natural ability to take over, that is what you want to see, and that's what you see from Sam Abrahamson. This is one of my favorite players.
Yeah, at the future games, it was tough luck, I guess, because he was never a player of the game individually. But I think if you had to award somebody from our team as whatever the best hitter of the weekend, I think it would have been him. I think he had the most hits, or it was tied for the most amount of hits, and he got on base a ton, and he was just productive all the way around, games 1 through 3. So he does it in game. The tools too. If you just looked at his profile or something, you would be why is this kid at 14 or something? So he's got everything. And he was just really competitive too on top of it all. So echo Vinny there.
Yes, teammate over at Hudson also Slotting in the 20s, Jace Matachinsky. He's someone that I loved seeing at State this year. The swing is great. He hits for both contact and power. Another possible two-way talent, up to 89 on the mound. Exit velo up near 97 miles an hour. Lanky, long-levered. Probably more of a third baseman long-term, but he has the arm for it. Up to 92 across the diamond. Matachinsky, someone that I really like. I think he's going to be an excellent talent, both over there with Hudson. A few other bats, Trey Kirchhoff, Jimmy Angle, two-way guy, and Kellen Tomczyk. So these are all really good talents that are ones who impressed this summer. Fields, you're out there as much as anyone over the summer. So, I mean, Kirchhoff, Angle, Tomczyk, which of those guys stands out to you? Or maybe you want to focus on all three because they're all tremendous talents.
Well,
They're all
actually,
moving up.
You
in
can,
this.
real quick, just to interject with the Matachinsky thing, too, is David, like this fall video from him on the mound looks really special, actually. Fields and I were, like, talking about that. Like, we're actually super high on him in 2025. Just, there's an upside positionally, but, like, Fields, if you want to just mention what you saw in that video out of the mound, because he went to a Minnesota event this fall that we weren't at, but just on the video alone, it's pretty special.
Yeah, so David teased the arm from across the diamond. On the mound, it's a real operation with a fluidity in the arm and looseness. It was up to 89 with the fastball. He throws the fastball for strikes. The off-speed pitches are developing, but this is a guy that's new to the mound, a guy that we could see take a real big jump, not only in just the velo, but just in the overall pitchability, the strikes, like really soon. It's a guy that Andy and I are like circling, just hoping to see him in the spring or in the showcase.
We liked when we saw him this spring. Feels like, well, I mean, we've always liked the athlete. Like he's 6'3", but he really moves well defensively, like up the middle of the infield. Looks like a shortstop too, and there just aren't that many 6'3" like fluid defenders. And then you kind of factor in what he's capable of on the mound. It's like, all right, yeah. So that was one that I just didn't want. I wanted to spend a second talking about him, David, because he stood out to us in the fall for a couple of reasons.
Yeah, and then with the other guys you mentioned, I mean, they're all moving up. So like, these are all arrow up guys for us. Like Trey Kirchhoff, I saw him in the fall over at a GRB Sticks showcase that they asked us to attend, and it's a very similar offensive profile to Winston Alonzo. I mean, outside of the fact that he's a right-handed hitter and Winston's obviously a left-handed hitter, but it's a very balanced swing, bats a ball guy, and I've started to see him tap into more game power in the fall, like driving baseballs in the air and to the pole side and line drives to the gaps. Really good third baseman too. It's a guy that we identified early. He was a junior future gamer back in with Dominic Santarelli back then. So he's a guy that we've had our eye on for a while. Jimmy Angle's another guy that's arrow up for us. He's more of a corner outfield profile, but he gets his A swing off very often. It's almost every swing. He's just getting his A swing off, and the power has been there. He hits for he gets a lot of extra bases. And then, the athlete is also developing there. He's now a sub-7 runner. Like, this is a guy that we could see take another step this spring as well.
Yeah, Angle, just a really physical right-handed hitter with some power and bat the balls, like kind of progressing too. Like, he's got a lot of things going for him. It was a huge year for Jimmy Angle. Definite, like, Division I caliber prospect, which, like, as the field goal or the goalpost kind of adjusts there with what that means, like, I think you could still consider him just that. Like, he had a really, really good year, so excited to see where he goes in 2025.
Yeah, when we saw him at the state games, it was just, like, impressive, like, and we were just kind of looking at each other, like, scratch our hands, like, nah, it's a future gamer. and we didn't, unfortunately, invite Jimmy Angle, but he certainly would have not only fit in with that group at the future games, but he would have stood out. I mean, so impressive what we saw from him at the future games. And, wherever he ends up, my goodness, they are going to get a steal in Jimmy Angle. Really good player.
Yeah, and then I wanted to mention Kellen Tomczyk. Like, this guy is advanced talent on both sides of the ball. It's 88 on the up on the bump with multiple pitches. He throws them for strikes. It's a big breaking ball. It's 90 miles an hour across the diamond from the left side with some bats of ball skills. It's a right profile. I mean, not sure what he's going to end up being, but right now it's a advanced baseball player on both sides.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to quickly, I mean, we are just touching on a bunch of the players that we're touching on that we really like, but it is not an indication that we don't like some of the other guys that we're kind of skipping over in these rankings. I mean, we are absolutely in love with Jake Cummings and his glove and what he can do up the middle. Mason Schmidt showed out so well on the mound in the future games. Really impressed with him and what he can do. I'm going to talk about Cale Geiger in a second. But Bryce Mishler, Cade Minato. I mean, Braden Olivo, let's not forget about Matthew Hippis. How loaded is this class, guys? I mean, how deep are we going and talking about some of these guys? And please don't take it again as a slight that we're not mentioning you if you're listening to this podcast, because there are just guys up and down this list that we absolutely love.
Yeah, what makes it easier too, Vinny? Like, I really have not. I've had a ton of awesome conversations with these kids too. Like, I feel like they are good, respectful people, but not just that. Like they're competitive, hardworking, just easy to root for. All these guys we've kind of talked about have showed that, and I don't know, that always makes it a lot just more fun to follow and cover. Right. It's just a fun class. I'm excited to just continue to see where they go. It's a really good group.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this class we're seeing a lot of commits now. We've seen the timeline of it shift back with the new recruiting rules, which we talked about. I think it was in episode 1. And we've also seen a number of them commit to UWM. They're the only Division I school in the state, and they're being a little bit more aggressive this year. They've gotten Ian Koczynski, Braden Olivo, Braden Banyai, and Tanner Buellman. So they've gotten 4 in-state commits already. How are we seeing UWM strategy change in that? And I mean, what's significant about UWM getting those in-state guys if UWM is going to compete maybe on a bigger scale, Vinny?
Yeah, so really interesting conversation I actually had with the recruiting coordinator, Mike Picaro, who previously was at Arizona State helping out with their coaching staff, and now he is at UW Milwaukee in our backyard. And look, these guys are going to put together a really good mid-major program here, especially considering some of the commits that they have coming in. And it was a really interesting conversation just because, okay, so why do we not see that many guys commit at this point? And Andy, maybe you can expand on that here in a second, but the fact that these kids, there's a few reasons. The rosters are shrinking, right? So at some point, we've all heard and read about the fact that the rosters are going to potentially be shrinking from 40 to 34. But then also you think about the transfer portal. And so now these kids and the program heads around the state, and even probably around the country, but certainly around the state, the guys that are running the programs, the GRBs, the hitters, the PTAs, the sticks, the ISAs of the world, they're getting smarter in advising the kids, okay, let's go ahead and wait and see what happens with this particular roster, with this program. And then the other part of it is with how they are getting smarter is, and I talk about this at every single showcase that I lead and kick it off with a speech, is I tell players you got to find a fit, whether you are and are realistic in your talent, whether you're a Division III player or you're a Division I player, you got to find a fit where you're going to go ahead and play. And I think kids and players are finally I think they've always thought about this. But I think now more than ever, the majority of players are understanding that they need to find a fit to be able to develop and play at the next level. And I think that's why you're seeing the UWMs of the world being more in play, even though they might not have the same facilities as let's say, an SEC school, which sometimes have a better clubhouse than even like a major league team. But you are going to get a chance to play. You're going to get a chance to develop. You still have to prove yourself for sure at a UWM, but now all of a sudden you're going to get a chance to maybe turn into that next Dalton Varsho, right? I mean, stranger things have happened. So I think that's the reason why they're going to be able to be in play on a lot of these players around the state, and they're paying attention to a lot of players around the state now more than ever. And so it's going to be fun to watch to see where UWM goes. And I'm a big fan of those of Bowman and Kaczynski that both have committed to UW Milwaukee, and I think those are good fits for both those guys.
Yeah, it's pretty like telling too. Like they're kind of zagging. UWM is kind of zagging when other programs are maybe zigging, or if that's the way you want to phrase it, where like there's just their other programs have to take their time in the transfer portal in the summer, like scouting that, or just familiarizing themselves with this incoming junior class with the recruiting rules change. But the UWM here now gets to take advantage of like their own backyard, like more familiarity with some of these players. Like all these guys are pretty local to the Milwaukee area specifically. So they're just taking risks on some of like players that I think there's a lot in common with each of these four guys, despite them playing like very different positions for the most part. They're all like that guy. Like maybe you've had a teammate like that that's just like, yeah, he doesn't have like all these tools. He's not like the biggest kid or like the fastest runner or something, but it's just like he's just a really good baseball player. Like he like maybe cares most, or he's like the verbal leader, something like that. And each of these four guys like have those traits. Like Tanner Bowman sticks out just because he's not the biggest kid, but like might be the guy that you hand the ball to like in a must-win game. Like it's strikes, like it's deception, 3 pitches, all that. Maybe just without the velocity and currently, like that's something he could figure out. Like that's just an example of like the kind of prospect I guess UWM is like targeting here. Like it's just a really like competitive like 4 players here that you can like build around. Like that's kind of like a culture creating effect, I think, that bringing these types of like competitive athletes. So it's really exciting. I like kudos to them. It's like a pretty productive fall in my opinion.
Yeah, and I didn't mention Banya and Olivo. Yeah, for sure. All 4 of these guys are going to be able to really help that UWM program win at that next level.
Yeah, a few other commits from both the 25 and 26 class. Well, in addition to the ones we've talked about, Ryan Brennicky, he's one of the top players in the 2025 class, and we've talked about him. He was originally a South Carolina commit, but then decommitted, and now he's committed to Wake Forest, so an excellent program down in that same Carolina region. He's from Oconomowoc, lefty, up to 93, 3-pitch mix, has pretty much everything that you look for in an arm. A few others, Kelton Opper, committed to Stevens Point. He's a lefty from Pacelli Catholic, and he's someone that I think we could see make a velo jump and be a big arm for them. And then Jackson Kovalarczyk committing to Concordia, Wisconsin, and Drew Lukow committing to Nyack. I mean, Brennicky's the one that probably we're going to be focusing on most, although we've talked about him a lot lately. The fit at Wake Forest, they're a very data-driven team known for their pitching development. Fields, I mean, do you see this as a good fit for Brennicky?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think any pitcher could go to Wake Forest and it just not be a good thing, but Ryan Brennicky, with the amount of strikes that he throws with all of his pitches on top of like the data-driven stuff that they'll do there, and maybe they'll tweak a few pitches and just optimize his whole arsenal a little more, that would just only help Ryan.
And I want to mention Jackson Kovalarczyk as well really quick because, first of all, his dad is a friend of mine because he is a Brewers fantasy camper who can really play, right? Kobe, we call him. So he is a two-way talent, and so is his son Jackson, because he's going to be able to play third base actually at Concordia. So that's a really good fit for Jackson. Talk about just a phenomenal fit, right? So Jackson understands, like, okay, I'm going to go to the Division III level and really have a chance to grow and develop. Loves the coaching staff there. The manager from the Chinooks stuck around, is actually going to be the pitching coach at Concordia. So it's a really good fit for Jackson. But then, yes, on Brennicky, I wanted to also comment on, like, okay, from South Carolina to now Wake Forest, I think South Carolina is going to probably be kicking themselves for not trying to somehow retain Ryan Brennicky, because he is going to one of the best programs in the country now, and I think he's going to fit just fine.
Vinny, will Prep Baseball be sending any scouts down to Scout Fantasy Camp this year?
Not this year, but I've talked to Andy about that already. And perhaps we can get all three of you guys to come down there at some point and start tweeting out some of these fantasy campers.
Yeah, maybe we could do our own fantasy camp, Prep Baseball Wisconsin fantasy camp.
Yeah.
Does that mean I'd get to see Josh Fields run a 60-yard dash?
No,
I don't want to see that.
no.
Well, before we go, as always, we finish with the Rottino report. Vinny focusing on an uncommitted player in the state who's got a high ceiling, who's an impressive talent. So, Vinny, who's today's Rottino report?
Yeah, today we're talking about Cale Geiger, Menominee Falls High School, right-handed arm. Really impressed with how Cale Geiger moves through the delivery. I mean, we're talking about a hyper-mobile kid right here. The ability to just load into that back hip, get down the mound, show that quickness to the arm, that whip out in front. Commands a fastball. Really impressive horizontal run on that pitch, up to 19 inches on that at the showcase level, or at some of the showcases that we've seen him at, and then just the ability to spin a breaking ball and has a changeup to go with it. I mean, just you see, it's up to 90 miles per hour from a little bit of a smaller frame, but it's strong, it's compact, he repeats that delivery so well. That we love that Cale Geiger, and we love him so much that we have him in the top 20 in the class, and so it's impressive. He's uncommitted right now, and someone is going to get a steal in Cale Geiger wherever he does commit to.
Yeah, I'm glad actually we picked him for the Rottino report here, Vinny, just because he would have been a future gamer. He was invited, and he just got a poorly timed injury. Prevented him from going down there, but I have no doubt that he would have been one of the better arms we brought down there. I was really excited for him, but he's still really talented. Obviously, I just want to make sure he gets some attention, much needed attention from college coaches at the next level.
Yeah, it's a good call.
Well, I'm going to sound like a broken record for saying this, but make sure you're back with us next week as we go through the 2027 rankings, another big episode. We're going to expand that list. There will be a new number one, so if you like the 2026 episode and have an interest in this one, then listen to the 2027 one that's coming out next week, where we'll break down in the same manner another talented class. But before you go, make sure to subscribe to the podcast again, wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify. Leave a review. That helps us out. Or subscribe to us on YouTube at Prep Baseball WI, or you could search Badger State Ball or Prep Baseball Wisconsin, and we'll come up. Follow us on Twitter over at Prep Baseball WI, or go to our website at prepbaseballreport.com. A lot going up there, and we had a deeper dive into the 2026 rankings up there also that Josh Fields wrote. So if you're looking for more on the 2026s or just any of our other coverage around the state, be sure to check us out in all those places. So thanks again for joining us for episode 5, and as always, let's bring back Badger Baseball.